Lo primero, recordaros que esto es grabado, ¿eh? La ley de protección de datos. Good afternoon, everybody. Muy buenas tardes. Today we have, is the recording, no? Today we have Dr. Celeste. She's from Universidade Nova de Lisboa. She is PhD in Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering from University of Birmingham, 2003. Currently, she is assistant professor at the Faculty of Science and Technology at the same university. From 1978 to 1998, she has been working in the manufacturing industry as production manager, quality management, and project management. She started to work in health and safety after that. Okay? She works on accident investigation and analysis, and she's the author, the main author of the method REACT, and the method before that, WHITE. Thank you for coming. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Whenever you will.
Thank you. Buenos días a todos. Solo unas pocas palabras en portuñol para agradecer. Estoy muy feliz por estar aquí. Gracias por la invitación. And now I'm changing to English because I cannot speak Spanish, and speaking portuñol is sometimes dangerous. So thank you for your presence. I'm going to give a seminar on accident investigation and analysis, and we should face this as a roadmap for organizational learning. So the main point of any investigation is to be able to learn with it and to change things after it. And the first question is, why are we talking about this? I'm sure you have much more interesting things to talk than investigating accidents. So why bother? And especially, why bother? Why you bother? Because as the slide shows, you see that the working conditions have been improving enormously. These pictures were taken about 8 years old, 8 years ago, almost 100 years old. And the working conditions are not there anymore. We have improved enormously. Also, because risk acceptability from our side, from the society, has changed a lot. And this means that accidents are decreasing, but they are still very high. And you are the new generation that will change the future. You are the generation that will shape the future. So this is really dedicated to you. And to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about, I've got here a few statistics, very recent. Sorry to be in Portuguese, but I could only find, this is from the Eurostat, so from the European source. But I could only find them in Portuguese. These are recent statistics of serious and fatal accidents in Europe. And you see that Spain is in number 3 because it's a big country. It's not because you have more accidents than the others. It's because you are a big country. So Portugal is not even there, which is good for me anyway. But you can see from the light color to the dark color that in the most of European countries, the accidents have really decreased a lot, sometimes almost by half. Look to Italy. Italy made a great success, but even though they are still a lot, so we have to keep on reducing them. And that is your job, because you are our future generation. So my agenda for today is made up of these 4 points. I will start with very basic definitions, just a couple, to make sure that we are talking about the same thing and we have a common understanding. Then I will make a short review of models of accident causation and then methods of accident analysis. And then I will stop with the last 15 minutes or so by talking a little bit more with some more detail about the REACT process to make, which is developed, has been developed for accident investigation and analysis. the objective of this session, as I already told from the beginning, is to address ways of investigating and analyzing accidents that are considered modern and that promote, above all, that promote organizational learning. So the main objective of doing anything in this area is to make sure that we do the effort to learn and to improve. Otherwise, there is little gain in doing that. This is a short list of references. I'm going to pass it. If you need, just in case, if you need later on to go back to something, you have a list of references here for your orientation. So starting from the beginning, to make sure that we all understand what we're talking about and that we have the same understanding of this conversation. We can define an accident, any type of accident, with three characteristics, three basic characteristics. The first one is the randomness. It is an unplanned event. The second one is that there will be some kind of transference of energy that will cause damage, and this damage could be in a person, in the environment, or in the property. And finally, that there will be a consequence, a specific consequence, an injury to a person, a damage to the property, as already mentioned, or the environment. On the other hand, when we talk about near miss or dangerous occurrence, you have only the two first characteristics. The third one, which is the injury itself, it didn't happen, so it was almost an accident. The importance of studying them is because you have all the ingredients of an accident without having the injury, without having the pain. So they are also very useful for studying and to understand what went wrong. Another two definitions that I think it's important, but this is not as important as those before, is the definition of investigating and analysis. When you read books, textbooks, or papers, you will find that sometimes some authors use only the word investigation for everything. Other authors use the word analysis for everything. But I personally prefer to separate them, because if we separate them, I think we will be more careful when we do our job. So investigation for me means a search for data, for facts. Fact finding. We are going to search for facts. It is something that is observable. It's supposed to be not biased at all. It's observable. And we usually call this data, just data. Okay? Analysis, on the other hand, for me, it's something else. It's what we do next to interpret data and to establish causes, to establish causal links, to make the linkage between these data. So data becomes now information. So there is a little difference. I'm not saying that this should be, everybody should follow this idea. This is my idea, but I think it's helpful for us when we are doing an investigation and an analysis, because the two things interlink between each other and give us the full process. So they are complementary to each other. The last definition is learning. This definition is from Nya and Brandt. They are two Nordish authors. And the definition they give is that learning is the process related to establishing new knowledge, aiming to implement changes to, or gaining deeper comprehension of, and or confirming the basis for current practices. This is their definition. But I think that the most important for us is to keep in mind that learning implies change. And we know that change usually is painful. So learning implies change. So this is, for me, the most important message of this definition. I am now moving into the section 2, talking about models of accident causation. I'm going to be very quick in this kind of presentation, because I know that almost all of you already know about this. So I'm going to be very brief. But first, I would like again to make a difference between models and methods. Once again, when you read textbooks or when you read some papers in scientific journals, we find that for some authors use the word models for everything, others use the word methods for everything. And once again, maybe because I'm an engineer, I don't know, I like to, to separate things. And models are indeed different from methods. Models are theories, is very abstract, general ideas to explain the origin of accidents, to explain why they happen, to explain accidents mechanism. While methods are tools, just any other tool, like a screwdriver. We use a screwdriver to screw something. So methods should be seen as practical tools, something specific, concrete, not as models, that will help a user to perform a specific task, and the specific task naturally is the investigation of the accident. So if we keep this in mind, I think it will help us to be more specific and more objective in our work. And the results of accident investigation are very important for inputs to improve also risk assessment. So this is a wheel of continuous improvement, like everything else in modern theories today. I have only one slide, only this, to review a few accident models. So now I'm talking about the theories, okay, that we use to produce the methods. These are some of them very old, and some of them already past, already out of date, but they still have a historical use to start a discussion. And these are, in my opinion, these are the most important milestones, the most important moments of the development of accident causation theories. So you have here 3 of them, very famous. You already know them for sure. The Irish domino theory, that was immediately followed by Bird, also a domino theory. It's even sometimes called the modified domino. And in this case, the accident was seen as a sequence of dominoes. When one goes down, everything goes down. So a single sequence and a single cause. This is now out of date, but as I told you, it has historical value. Then we have the energy model. Everybody knows this one, also very much used for risk assessment. And the idea behind this is that an accident occurs because some kind of harmful energy will have an impact and will cause an accident by hurting someone or something. Finally, in 1984, but this was established before in the 70s, the deviation model by Celeste. Celeste is a Swedish professor, and he started this, as I said, this theory in the 70s, but it became more famous in 84. And the deviation model defends that any kind of deviation from the normal procedure, any kind of deviation from the standard, could be harmful, could be dangerous, and can be the cause of an accident. After this, more or less also in the 70s, we had a change, and all the old models with a single cause and a single chain of events moved to this idea of multiple causes. So currently we are at this stage. I don't know where we're going to be in the future, but now we accept and we believe that an accident doesn't have one single cause or one single chain of events, but is a result of a combination of multiple causes. And when we go to this part, the first one was Turner. It's also called epidemiological theories because it has a resemblance with the medicine. And he saw this incubation trigger theory as he explained an accident as a sort of problems in or weaknesses, safety weaknesses that were already in the system incubating, like a virus incubating for a long time, nothing happened until a trigger event caused an accident. So this was the first theory that gave rise immediately after that in the 90s to reason the Swiss cheese model that you already know of, and also the model of organizational accidents, which is a bit similar to the incubation theories. For a reason, we have latent causes that are already in the system for a long time without being noticed until something, the active causes, combine with them and provoke the accident. And finally, after 1997 and already in 2002, so already in this millennium, we have several. I have only one there. It was the first one and the best known, but there are several accident theories following this kind of line, the so-called social technical models. And they go beyond that, beyond the organization, and they go inclusive to the regulations and to the governments, and that shape to the outside world, that shape our behavior inside an organization. So from now on, I will concentrate a little bit in reasons model, and again, I will be faster because I suppose I know that everybody knows about this, right? Yes? Okay. So you know this model reasons is that the accident itself is on the top. We have a danger that when this danger or this hazard can cross the barriers, we will have an accident. And behind the accident, we have the causation layers. The first layer is the unsafe acts of people. People in the singular or people in the plural, could be a team. But our acts, our unsafe acts, our behaviors, the human behaviors are shaped and are influenced by the local workplace factors. So the workplace shapes the way we behave, the way we do things. And who is in charge, who has the power and the money to control the workplace? Of course, the management and the organizational factors are controlled by the management. So this is the hierarchy of causation, and you have on the top and unsafe acts. Typically, you have the so-called active causes, those that are immediately related with the accident, that provoke the accident immediately. Far away, at the workplace factors and organizational or management factors, you have the latent causes, like the incubating theory. You have the latent causes that are already there every day without provoking an accident, until one day in particular, they combine, they facilitate the active causes, and then you have the accident. So after saying this, I think I can be very fast here. I don't have to define it again. Active failures are directly related with the accident, could be failure in equipment, could be human errors, could be anything else that has a direct role in the accident. Latent failures, on the other hand, are weaknesses in the organization that are already there for a long time without being seen. They are difficult to see, and you only see them when the active cause comes into place. So when there is a combination of several factors on that moment, on that day, to provoke the accident. And examples are insufficient supervision, poor maintenance, bad decisions, poor management, bad procedures, and so on. And here are the 3 levels that I've highlighted before: the people, the working environment, and the management, because the management are those who have the power and the responsibility to control the working environment. And to finish this model, we only have to remember that when it talks about barriers and defenses, we have 2 main types of barriers and defenses. Some are physical, we can see them like this type of fences and or PPE or ventilation systems, whatever, physical barriers. And these are likely to be or to become active failures, to fail and to provoke the accident directly. But we also have the others, the administrative failures, and I'm talking about norms, warnings, procedures, work permits, and so on. And most commonly, these are considered the latent conditions. So they are already weak points, but they don't cause the accident directly. And these kind of failures, these kind of barriers, they can fail by several reasons. And one of them is not even being there. So they are there, but they don't work well. They are there and work well, but people don't know about them. It happens a lot of times. They are there, they are working well, but the workers, they don't even know. And finally, they are not there. So failure could take all these forms. And now moving into methods of accident investigation. You have thousands, not thousands, but I think you have more than we have, more than 100 different methods. So of course, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I've got this slide here, this was taken from a Greek group of authors from Safety Science. Safety Science is a very well-known journal, scientific journal in our area. This group of authors made this kind of summary, okay? And I just decided to use it here to quickly show that these are some of the most known, of the best known. And I have, let me try to use this, see if it works. I have weight here because this was mine. Well, was and still is mine. And now today I'm going to talk about this one next because this is a simpler version of weight. And for your reference in the future, I've got here a list of 5 methods. And I've chosen these 5, only these 5, among more than 100, for a few reasons. First of all these are very, very specific for accidents at work, because almost all the others are for all types of accidents, and many are for complex accidents, in aviation, oil, offshore, nuclear power, power plants. So these 5 are specific for accidents at work, first of all. Second, all of them are after the millennium, so they are recent. And all of them, or almost all of them, have a user's manual. This is important because the old methods, you don't have a user's manual. You have a book with a description, but then if you want to use it, what next? How can I do it? It's not so easy, okay? So all of these have come with user's manual in a very straightforward language, very simple, prepared for professionals, not for scientists, but for professionals. And finally, all of them are available free, which is also important, except this one, which is a standard, a European standard. So we have to pay for this one. But anyway, this one in itself is not a method. This one is a guidance concerning general aspects of accident analysis and accident investigation, and the norm also gives you information on, I think it's 3 or 4 different methods, 3 or 4, I'm not sure. So this one is not a method, but it's a standard that gives you entrance to methods. And all the others are available. This one in particular is the methods used by the British authorities, published by them, so you can simply download and use it. And again, almost all of these methods, almost these, are based on reason theory. Again, these two were developed by myself, and I believe that's one of the reasons that's why I am here today with you. This one was developed by myself in England when I was working in England for my PhD, so it is in English, and there are 2 versions, Portuguese and English version, and the English version is for free in this address. And this one is much more recent, and it was a simplification of weight, because simple things usually work well. And it's not only a simplification, it was also wider. It is also wider. So compared to the previous one, you can consider that weight is like a more complex, a little bit more complex methodology. And this one is very similar, but it's simpler and it's wider in terms of use. And I'm going to, this is the last part, and I'm going to show how it works. And on top of it, they are officially published in scientific journals, but they have both been adopted by the Portuguese labor inspectors to run their own accident investigations, their official inquiries. They call it inquiries, is the official term. I don't know if you call it also inquérito, but in Portugal, they call inquérito to the official investigation. And that's it. So I'm going now to move to the last part of RIAT. This is the last part of my seminar, speaking a little bit about RIAT, a very fast explanation, because it is available free in Portuguese, and you will find that it's easy for the Spanish to read Portuguese. I think it's difficult for you to understand Portuguese because of the sounds. We have a lot of sounds, phonetics, but when you read, it's much easier. But anyway, it's in Portuguese, available in Portuguese and available in English as well. So usually I call it, the name RIAT, the acronym goes for Recording, Investigation and Analysis of Accidents at Work. In English, it doesn't make really connection, but in Portuguese we say acidentes de trabalho, and you say acidentes de trabajo. So AT has got a meaning, okay? I call it a process or a procedure on purpose to show that it's not just one method, it is something else. I'll come back to this a little bit later. And finally, I told that before that this was a simpler version of weight, but it is more comprehensive now, because it now integrates the complete cycle of accident information. So the basic postulates the basic motivation for RIAT to go from weight to RIAT was to make sure that we would have, as a consequence, organizational learning would be a consequence, that this would not be a method just for investigation and analysis, but also to make sure that we would be able to learn something with this and to make changes. Remember, changes sometimes are difficult and they hurt, but we don't make changes. We don't have the statistics going back on accidents at work. So we have to make sure that this make changes. So we know that to prevent, we need to learn. Of course, we need to learn, and we need to understand the accidents. That's why we have to analyze them. Knowing assumes learning, and this goes, we are in a university, and this goes for all of us. We expect that knowing more means learning, but be careful, sometimes this is not true, okay? If you don't use your knowledge to do something, then you didn't really learn anything. So learning implies the ability of new knowledge to convey changes. So this is, again, changing something for better, of course, is the key word. So this is the golden, I think, is the golden idea behind what we do has to have a consequence. Otherwise, we are just spending effort for nothing, and effort is difficult. So we should make sure it is useful for something. And the effect, the last part, I think it's important. The effect is amplified, your learning is amplified when it is shared across the organization with other people. So this is kind of a philosophy, but it's what is underneath any kind of methods, I believe, nowadays. When we developed RIAT, we were based in 3 main pillars, and this was the state of the art. I mean, the theory that we have just seen, the models, not from me, that all these models from the very famous and very recommended authors. Then we went to the fieldwork, we went to companies, good companies. We all know that some companies are really good in what they do. They don't have scientists. They have professionals, safety professionals, practical people, and they are very good with what they do. So we went there to 17 companies considered good, okay, and we went to learn with them and to check what would be more useful for them. How would they like to see a new method? How would you prefer to have it as a tool? Because these are our clients, like it or not. We are not working for ourselves, we are working for the community, for the others. And finally, also the legal requirements, like it or not. We have the legal duty to, and also in Spain, because this comes from the European directive. So we have the legal duty to investigate accidents and to keep records on those investigations. Again, the reasons theory, I'm not going to explain it again. This is here just to highlight that the theory behind this method is reasons. As I told you, I call it a process on purpose. We can also call it a method, but I prefer to call it a process. And the 2 instruments to make this happen, the palpable instruments are a form and the user's manual. The user's manual is very short, only 15 pages, and gives step-by-step guidance, and it's in a very straightforward language. There is no big scientific language, it's very easy to follow. And the form is 6 pages on a paper, but everything is coded, so it's very easy for companies who wish to do that. They can transform easily the form into a software if they wish to do so. The form looks like this. Of course, you cannot see, I'm sorry, but it's just to give you an idea of how it looks like, okay? So this process is divided into 4 parts, and I'm going to explain you immediately what are these 4 parts. And the reason why I like to call it a process, you are all from industrial engineering, right? Sort of? Okay. So you know exactly what I mean when I speak about a process. Because when we speak about processes in industrial engineering, we immediately know that we have inputs and outputs, and they have to be different, first of all. Secondly, if it's a process, it has a series of sequential activities that transform something. So you have a transformation process from inputs into outputs. And finally, most importantly, we have added value. How do you say added value in Spanish? Valor acrescentado? ¿Ah?
Valor añadido.
Valor añadido. Gracias. Valor añadido. So added value, yes. And this is exactly what we need, is to have added value, to compensate, to pay off our effort. So here you are, the 4 steps are the 4 activities, sequential activities are this. The first part of REACT is just recording and registration of the event, is collecting data. And you already do this, everybody already does this, because we have to fill in a so-called notification form for the authorities, right? All companies have to do this. When there is an accident, they have to report to
Our medical
yes?
authority.
The authority, yeah. But do you have a name for the authority? Instituto.
We have 2 different parts. We have a notification that is made to the labor authority.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. Yes.
That is the ESAW information. But the investigation, of course, is not it's mandatory to do it, but you do not have to.
Yes,
to
it's the same. It's the same in all European Union. So this one, the medical
authority.
No. Yeah, but what you said is exactly the same in all European Union. So we have, all of us, we have to do the notification for the labor authorities. So it's the basic description of the accident. What happened, what was the injury, very basic, okay? So this part 1 already exists. So I didn't want to invent anything different. I just incorporated what we already have to do. Then the second part, it's compulsory by law. We should do it, but we don't have to report it, which means that many of us simply don't do it. Others do it, but just, just to pretend. It's not really, with the intention of learning. It's just, in Portugal, we say para inglês ver, for the British to see. It's a popular saying in Portugal. When we say you do something just for the audits to see, and it's not really serious, we say it's for the British to see. So it's not just to show off, not to take seriously. That's a costume, what we sometimes say when we have something, we do something, but it's not really serious, it's just for show off. Okay, so sometimes people do this, and what I used to say is, if it's for show off, don't do it. You are just spending money, throwing money away, ignore it, because if it's for show off, it doesn't change anything. And worse, it doesn't change everything, and it gives the false sensation that we are doing something, which is not true. So it's better to be honest and say, okay, we are not doing it. One day we will do, not now, but this needs to be done, and this is one of the biggest and most important, in my opinion, values of REACT procedure. Then, of course, we need to have a plan of action, because if we analyze everything, we have to make corrections and to make improvements. And finally, and this is the last step that is really important, is the learning and the sharing. So in this case, the form forces you to identify what you have learned. So simply, The part one, the recording or the notification, only has 2 pages. This already exists, very similar. In Spain, you already have the electronic notification, but it's similar. In Portugal, we have still the paper notification, but from January onwards, we also will change to the electronic one. So this is very, as I told you, this is something very factual, fact-finding, okay? Fact-finding and recording, nothing else, only observable elements. And one of the important things is that we already have the ESO methodology. In Spanish is also the EIAT, Estatísticas Europeas de Accidentes de Trabajo, certo? Methodology. So this is already coded in a way that is international, not only for European Union, but also the ILO, the International Labour Organization, recommends people to use this kind of code. So this is good because we can exchange data, we can exchange information, we can make statistics that are comparable to others, and this is an important element of our basis. If you want, I'm going back now to weight methods. So this was part of the weight method, and it's now in React, it's only facultative, it's only, how do you say, it's not compulsory, you don't have to do it, it's volunteer if you want to, but it's useful to do it. You pick up all the active failures, not just the Eurostat deviation, which is the last active cause that provoked the accident. You check all the active failures and you classify them in these 5 categories. So human, for human actions, E and B for equipment and buildings, or any kind of structures, hazards, Haz for hazardous materials, LOR for living organisms, animals, plants, bacteria, anything that is danger, any hazard that is alive, and NET for natural phenomena. I did not invent these 5 categories just because. The reason I did these 5 categories is because in the EEAT or the ESO methodology, if you look carefully at the material agent of deviation or material agent of contact, if you look at it, all of them fit in these categories. They will be either a problem with humans or a problem with tools and machines and buildings or natural phenomena. They even call it natural phenomena. They have a class for natural phenomena. So I have used more or less the same categories because, again, to be able to match and to compare and to make statistics and to organize things in a simple way. Examples of active failures of humans are actions and behaviors like bad movements, false moves. Sometimes we just fall or sleep because of ourselves. Nothing was there. Dangerous driving of vehicles, using tools, misusing tools in an incorrect way. So all these are human wrong actions. When talking about equipment and buildings, we may have, or structures, we may have also failures. Structures that go down, that ruptures in hoses like this, for example. So any failure in equipment or buildings can be an active failure. The third category is hazards in general, and most of them the most common are chemical hazards of all kinds. And this is why we have all these signs. Chemical hazards, but also physical hazards, like, for example, loaded, suspended loaded, or very sharp edges of something. The fourth is the living organisms. In many professions, people have to work with living organisms. A lot of people work, nurses and doctors, for example, have to work with virus and bacteria and infected people and infected needles and whatever. So there will be living organisms attacking the victims and causing an accident at work. You can also have people working in the field and being bitten by snakes, by rats, by dogs. This is possible. This could be a working accident. And in Spain, you can also have this. This is an occupational hazard, not for the bull, but for the man, okay? So, in my country as well. So in Iberia, we have this occupational hazard. Finally, the natural phenomena, it's easy to understand. Most of the times, natural phenomena is not a direct cause of accident. It's just something that helps, is an influencing cause, not a direct cause. So, moving to the second part of RIAT, we are now going to enter in the in-depth investigation and analysis. Now, this is when we are going to do it. And here you are, the reason model, the same 3 levels, people, workplace factors, and management, okay? And now I have headed the legislation, occupational health and safety legislation. Please mind, the legislation is not a hazard, okay? It's not a hazard, because some people with this slide, they get a bit confused. Legislation is not a hazard, on the contrary. In the mind of our legislators, the legislation is the first barrier, is the first of all, is the minimum barrier we have to implement. So if we don't do it, if it's not well implemented, and if we didn't see it, if we don't know about it, then the failure of implementing legislation, that is the hazard, not the legislation, of course. So in the spirit of law, this is the first group of barriers. If it's not well implemented, then of course we will have already a breach or something that could happen. And it's important for an organization, when they are investigating an accident that already happened, it's a very good opportunity. Some people don't like to do it, you know, but it's a very good opportunity internally to check, okay, are we filling in all the legal requirements, yes or no? And if not, why not? What is missing? This is very, very important for ourselves, not for the inspectors, the labor inspectors, but for ourselves. So again, this is the same layers. We have the legislation, management factors, organized workplace factors, and people. Because sometimes you don't have much gain, much added value to investigate all the details. You can decide if our investigation and our analysis is a little bit shorter or complete. And the user's manual gives you a kind of a decision tree to decide which accidents should be investigated in full, completely, because not all of them deserve the same amount of attention. So we should, but this is just an help, this is just to remember, because I believe that each company should decide what are the criteria to decide which accidents actually should be investigated in full or not. Because honestly, some of them, we don't learn much. It's my opinion. Then part 2 again, we have this, it looks like this, you know, the blue is one example that is already analyzed and typed and recorded. This example is available in the net, so you can see it later on. If you wish, just go to the internet address, and the example is there again in Portuguese and in English, so you can check this example in detail. But the important thing is that here we have 4 sub-steps, secondary steps. The first one is to analyze individual failures and individual factors on human failures, so humans. The second is the workplace factors, the second layer of reason theory. So this forces us, you see, even for a person who doesn't know about reason, who never heard about James' reason and the model of the Swiss cheese model, anyone doing this, they are already following, even without noticing, they are already following the reasons model of organizational excellence. This is a classification of human error. Again, this is from reason. And for engineering people, at first sight, it seems difficult. I know nothing, I'm not a psychologist, so I know nothing about human error. I promise you, I'm also an engineer, and I promise you it's much easier than what we think. We just need to read, because it's very logical. It's very easy to read and to make a distinction. What are errors that we do without intention? Or if we intend, it was a mistake, and what are errors that were violations. But violations, safety violations, means people know, we were doing wrong, but we did not have intention to provoke an accident, to cause an accident. Sometimes our intention was very good, to get faster, to make it better for our company, to help a colleague. So we had a good intention, but we knew we were breaking the rules. When we're having errors, we don't know that we were breaking the rules. And some of them are completely unconscious, automatic. We do things in an automatic way, and others, we thought, we had a plan. I should do this. But the screwdriver is not here, I don't have time. Okay, I'm going to replace this with that, and it goes wrong. So this wasn't, we had time to think. This was just a few seconds. We had time to think, to make a plan, but it goes wrong. So it was a mistake. After you study a little bit, 1 hour, it's enough or less, and you start talking to the victims, it's very easy to identify what happened, to classify this kind of human error. And classifying it, it's important only because the way of preventing is completely different. To prevent an automatic movement, you don't need to give more training or more knowledge to the person, because it's automatic. We already know, I cannot do that, but it's automatic. So the only way of preventing is using physical barriers. It's the only way, or alarms. Just as the alarm we have in our cars when we forget, by distraction, the lights on. We already know, all of us, that we should disconnect, we should not leave the lights on. But sometimes we are in a hurry and we simply forget. So there is an alarm that reminds us that, oops, the alarm is on. And this is the way of preventing the top ones. By contrast, if you are talking about mistakes, people had time to think, but the plan went wrong. This could be prevented or at least improved with training, with knowledge. As for the last one, violations, we already know it was wrong, but we still did it with the intention of doing something good, or gaining some time, or doing it faster, or doing it in an easier way. So the only way, I usually think that the only way of preventing this one is with very good examples from the top. If the workers see that middle managers, and the CEO is really committed with safety, they will behave in the same way. So the preventing mode depends on the error mode, and that is why it is important to establish what was the error, okay? Here you are, I already explained this, what were the error types. So now we moved into the management and organizational conditions, and finally, if this was an accident, if we had an accident in our company, this is a good time to stop for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and try to check if all the legal requirements were indeed implemented or not. And then we move, by the way, the user's manual has got like a checklist for all these factors. So we don't have to invent anything. We just can use that as guidance. This. And we have guidance for that with a lot of with the structured and coded list with many, not all, but many possible factors for these failures. Then we have to make, after analyzing everything, we have to make, of course, a plan of action. And this plan of action is only one page, the form has only one page divided into 2 parts. And the first part is to make sure, to force us to look for our risk assessment, because by law, we should have risk assessment for everything. So when an accident happens, it's time again to stop for 5 minutes and check, did we have a risk assessment, yes or no? If no, it's time to do it. If yes, we did it, so why did it fail to prevent this accident? Maybe it needs to be improved and revised. And after that, we make the plan of action with responsibilities, with dates, with it has to be specific, not generic. If you make a generic plan of action, for sure, no one will make it happen. Okay, so it needs to be very specific, and it should be under the philosophy. This is the British have this in their law a lot. This is an acronym that the British use in their legal system to say that everything we do should make the risk go down as low as reasonably practicable, because we know that zero risk is impossible. And sometimes lowering a bit is already very, very costly. So, because they are very practical and in the way they think, they have this very short acronym for where should I go, how much, okay, how much, as low as reasonably practicable. And finally, this is the our principle. We used to say that we have to go from the unacceptable risk to the acceptable risk. In between, we have an area of indecision, an area of uncertainty, where we don't know exactly. It's not unacceptable, but it's not acceptable either. There is a certain amount of risk. And we need to use prevention and protection to reduce the risk from there to there. And the alarm principle in the British law is that figure on that side. So it goes from the very unacceptable region to the insignificant acceptable. Sorry, I put that in Portuguese. I forgot to switch to the English one. I did change this one, not that one, I'm sorry. But I think you can follow it, right? So in the middle, we have a big region with risk. And we should lower the risk. How much? As low as practically reasonable. And finally, in the fourth and last part of this RIAT process, we have the learning cycle. We have to pay attention to the learning, the learning and the sharing with the others. So it is also one page again, also divided into 2 sections. The first one is to make sure we are able to think and record, register what was the lesson. Because sometimes you will find that there was nothing special to learn with that accident. So don't lose your time. But in many cases, we have learned a lesson. What was the lesson? Write it. Because when we have to write it, you will find out that we are forced with ourselves to be very specific, okay? So what was the lesson? Why was it important? And who did learn? The second part is, okay, if we could learn a lesson, just a few of us, what are we going to do next to share this lesson with other people? And don't share. Some companies started to send emails and pamphlets to everybody. Wrong. Because if we start to send pamphlets and emails to everybody, that will be spam. People, very easily, people get used to it. You know, every day or every week there is a message of something related with safety or related with an accident. And people get used to it. It starts to being a common thing and it becomes easily spam. So don't do it. Just pick very specific key persons to send your message. If it was an electrical accident, make sure that only people dealing, the electricians and people dealing with electricity houses will receive it. And this way you will make sure that everybody will know, wow, if I'm receiving this, it has to do with me. So be careful with the way and with how many people you share your information. And that's it. To conclude, I would like to highlight here that, as you have seen before, the literature is full of new methods, new standards, new ideas, new everything, new ways of doing things, but or because of it, there is no excuse for not doing it. We have a lot of sources and we have a lot of methods to select and to help us doing our job. So in the second comment and the last one is that I will finish the same way as I have started. The effort is only worth doing only if we really learn and we change something. Otherwise, again, it's just spending money. And thank you for your attention. I'm finished.
Thank you very much.
I want to open questions part. You have some.
You can make your questions in Spanish if you speak slowly. Despacito. Despacito. If you se hablar en despacito, yo probablemente entiendo. But I will answer in English.
I got two questions for you,
Yes.
Celeste. The first is, what about the reliability and quality of the people that are performing the investigation?
Yes.
I worked for a long time for the legal authority here in Andalusia, and it seems to me like it depends the qualification and the way the inspector or the official is performing the investigation is affecting the conclusions of the report. It's like if you have someone that has read modern methods, other socio-technical models, it's going to go deeper in investigation and take into account different things. And if it's more or less, a person without too much training
knowledge,
will go to very factual things and just that.
Yes, you are absolutely right. But first of all, my effort is not does not go directly to the labor inspectors. I respect them very much.
No, it's an example. It will be the practitioner.
Yes, but this my worries is with the companies in general. So this is for everybody. But the problem is the same with inspectors and with people in company. We have exactly the same problem of reliability. And I totally agree with you. People that have more knowledge, that read more, that have more experience inclusively, they will probably be more competent. It's a matter of competence. I think it's in every case, even in electricity or setting down a floor or painting a wall. So training is important, knowledge is important, and experience is important for sure. And because I know that, I have 20 years of academia as a teacher, and I have 22 years as a chemical engineer in the industry. So I have kind of both sensibilities. And I know that it is important to have all this experience, training, and so on, and knowledge. And one of the reasons I've made this second methodology of the procedure, the REACT procedure, in a form was exactly to, it's not a guarantee, but it helps improving reliability, because the fields are very short, very specific, and the person has to follow the steps one by one. This is the first thing. So I think it helps. REACT helps to get more reliability in the investigation and also in the analysis. This procedure that is not factual, that is not observable, we have to make inference. And the second golden rule, and all books say this, and I agree, is don't ever make it with one person. It should be a team, 2 or 3 people. Investigations should be done with a team, not one person. And we are talking, I don't know about labor inspectors. I think they always do too.
Yeah, in Lucia, it goes the labor inspector would be the legal professional, and it's, with one of our technical safety experts, that would be a technical one. It would be a team of two. But I was thinking, like in most countries, like England or USA, that some methods like should be accompanied by some kind of course or qualification or minimum training to be effective.
In theory, again, there is difference between theory and practice, but in theory, I think that in companies and in the authorities, these people always have some kind of training, and there is a course. And you also have a standard course for professionals, for health and safety professionals. Of course, this course is for health, for safety, and it's very wide, and there's got a little bit of everything. So there is not a course specific for accident investigation, nothing. We do have one module, I think you also have one module, a large one, for risk assessment, right? So we teach people how to do risk assessment. We never teach people how to do accident investigation. Well, I do a little bit because I've got the privilege of doing this for my own research. And in Portugal, I always, almost once a year, I do a small course, only 2 hours. It's very small, but it's enough, of REACT for the inspectors. So they invite me every year for a seminar. They have 2 years of training with other methods. This is not the only one. They have 2 days of training. And and not everybody at the same time. So one year they have, for example, 30 people. The next year they will have another 30 people. And they give training for 2 full days. They put everybody together in a training center. And during those 2 days, they only have training in accident investigation. And one afternoon is usually dedicated to REACT, and they usually ask me to go personally and to do it myself. But if I cannot do it, one of the senior inspectors that is already acquainted with the method, he did his PhD, he did his master's in Guimarães with Pedro Areses. So we work together, and they are already, the senior ones are already able to.
At the end of the day, the important thing is training.
Yes.
No, the method. And I thought
but they have training in different methods.
The problem is the training.
Yes.
But what do you think about the main errors practitioners make when they are investigating? Not dependently of the method, no?
I think the main problem, to be honest, is again a matter of attitude. Attitude. Because I've noticed that some people and some organizations, when they do an investigation of an accident and they do the analysis and they do the report, again, they do it for show off, to pretend, to.
Yeah, you have to excuse your organization about the accident, not to investigate your process. That's it. I've been in the industry.
And sometimes these investigations are not deep enough to find anything really important, So at the end, they always have a stupid excuse.
No, you blame the
and
worker.
blame the worker. Yes, he knows very well. He shouldn't have done that. He already received training. We checked that he had training. He signed for training. And they blame the worker, and that's it. So we still have that problem.
Yes, but in your exposition, I just thought about the accidents, like falling out somewhere or cutting yourself with a machine or something like that. That is very controlled. But you think your work does work not only for controlled accidents, but for deeper problems like stress, economy,
Yes.
moving.
Yes.
Do you think it could be practical for those cases?
Again, in theory, everything is covered in React. And this kind of checklist I have for workplace factors, stress, night shifts, long working hours, everything is there. Colleagues that are bullying, all this is in the checklist. So you have the possibility when you have to interview the victim, by the way. And the most important thing is that when you interview the victim, you create confidence, a level of confidence, because the person needs to know that he or she is not going to be blamed. That is the first step. And by the way, when I do this, I always say, look, I'm not here. We are here, all of us, to learn, to understand what happened, to learn from this mishap, to improve safety, and not to blame. But be careful. We will not blame you, but we will not blame management as well. Because the moment the workers feel that they are not going to be blamed, for sure, they have this feeling of starting to put blame in the management, and it's like a transference. Blame is always there. Someone needs to be blamed. We are humans. So when anything goes wrong, we have, as humans, this immediate reaction that someone is to blame. So, okay, if it's not me, good. Management did this, management did that, my supervisor did this, my supervisor did that. I already complained 2 years ago. I already complained 2 months ago. I already made them know that this was wrong. So we have, it's not easy, but the first preoccupation when we start, the second part of, the first part is very easy, it's just observable. But the second part, when we really go deep and we really try to understand what should change to improve, that is the difficult part. And if you want very honest answers, you need to create this kind of harmony and confidence. You know, look the person in the eyes and say, we are not going to blame you for sure. Everything you say, for sure. But you also have to tell this person that we are not going to blame the management as well. So we are all learning. Otherwise, there will be a transference, you know, from this could happen. Did I answer your question? Not really. So stress and bullying and ergonomic problems and working nights, working shifts, and all these kind of factors are already in the checklist.
Okay, so in your work, it says that every exercise period you have to make the check. You have to check the checklist.
No. You don't have to check. The check, I'm calling it checklist. It's not really a checklist. It's a list of factors, and it's organized in several categories, very similar to contact and deviation of the European variables. It's similar. It looks like the same. Okay? So you have several families, several categories, and then you can use this list for guidance. There is not a checklist. It's not a check. It's just to help us. You can use it as if it was a checklist, but it's a guidance. When you talk to the you have another annex with 17 questions, open questions, but very open but very specific, okay? And if you follow those questions, when you are talking to the victim, you will be able to identify which factors are the problem. And they will help you to suggest corrections and improvements. People are able to give sometimes very good suggestions. Of course, sometimes they are costly, and management has to make a kind of balance, yes. But they will help you with the answers. They know the problem. When they identify the problem, they will also help you with the answers. We don't have to do the work by ourselves alone. Besides, we should be a team, at least 2-3 people. And I used to say that when we do this in companies, in private companies, it is very good to invite for the team the middle manager, the supervisor of that department, because he or she himself needs to be in the other side, you know, because they usually are on the side of quick, do it. I'm in a hurry, you have to do it. When you push them to this side and let's see what is wrong, this is our responsibility. This person will be more careful in the future. So it is a win-win situation. So in my opinion, from experience only, this is not a scientific statement, but only from experience, if you ask the middle management or the supervisor to be in your team, it will help because you are already sharing the lesson. They are already learning the lesson. And they will be the followers to take safety into their behaviors as well. So, yes.
Okay. Chris, thank you very much for this interesting seminar.
Thank you.
My question is, we can access to database, European database,
Yes.
with information about applicants in different countries. but this information is related with active reports, basically. And the question is there any mechanism to share the information from investigation of accidents in
Sorry, the last part I could not
Yes.
hear.
Is there any source
Yes.
of mechanisms to access to information of investigation of accidents?
No, I don't think so. Not that I know of.
Do you think it's very important to share this kind of information because the goal is to get information in order to prevent
Some-
accidents.
Just a second. Some labor authorities, Andalusia, USA, with facts, also I think the Danish government, we are sharing the public investigations
Yeah,
of accidents. But we are trying to do a common sharing of the accidents because it's very difficult for an enterprise of like 10 or 12 people working to experience a serious accident. It's a very rare event. So we publish that, we call this in Andalusia, we call it pudo haberse evitado. It could be avoided. And you can have those, typical situations, but it's not a full set of all accidents
Yes.
that occur in Andalusia, and not all of them are published. Just the ones that are
Just
repetitive.
important lessons.
Yeah, it's
For
less.
example,
But as a general data source, like you are looking for, I think
Denmark sometimes also have some public ones, and the British also sometimes have some public ones. But only very specific cases.
Linda Bellamy is working in Denmark, or the ORM projects.
Or project now is Holland.
It's Holland.
It's
In
Holland.
Holland, you can find a full set of accidents like
No. The whole project was based on 6,000 accidents, past accidents, and they created a software tool that companies can access, but they have to pay. At the beginning, they said it would be free because the project was financed by the European Union. But for some reason, probably because it was so expensive, I don't know the reason, but now companies have to pay. It's not much, but they have to pay. But the software is made in such a way that they used the 6,000 accidents to establish the accident mechanisms. So now the software is used for risk assessment. So if we have a company in Holland, we can access this ORM software, and we can use it for our benefit for risk assessment, because there will be probabilistic the software based on those 6,000 accidents became a probabilistic risk assessment tool. So it is a probabilistic thing based on 6,000 real accidents happened in Holland. So it's only valid for Holland, because if you go to another country, well, accidents are similar, of course, but the moment you change the context, okay, and the law and the culture, the moment you change all that, probably the probabilities also change. So, and because this is a probabilistic tool, I believe it's only valid for Holland. I don't know if other countries can access, but in Holland they can access. They have to pay something. It's not for free, but it's not very expensive as well. And this is used to make risk assessment. Okay? But it is based in 6,000 accidents. Yeah, huge project. It's still going on.
Yeah, in Andalusia we got 3,000 more or less. But we do not use standard method. It's a method that is a spice one. It's not a technical intervention. technical guidance.
Yeah, but anyway, if we have access to accidents that have happened, even if it's not just probabilistic information, if we have access to the detailed information of the causes and so on, that would be useful for prevention, again, for risk assessment, and that's the idea of improving.
Okay.
One,
The last
la
one.
última.
Thank you for coming. Congratulations for you.
Thank you, thank you.
Un poquito de español.
Okay. Sí, 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 sí.
Mi pregunta es paralela a la pregunta de Jesús. En España tenemos, cuando hay un accidente grave o mortal, igual que en Portugal, hay dos tipos de investigación. La investigación pública y la investigación privada,
Sí,
que hace la empresa.
¿verdad?
Como bien sabes, la situación de la investigación privada no está siendo del todo correcta. Del todo correcta. No es profunda. Lo
Claro
sabemos.
que no.
No es profunda. Habitualmente, la investigación queda en un acto inseguro, en una condición inmediata, en un fallo humano. Simple. Y como dices en tu método, que en mi opinión es, para mí, el mejor método, real y alternative way, el valor añadido es aprender de la investigación. Si no investigamos en profundidad, no podemos aprender, evidentemente. ¿Cómo podemos cambiar esta situación? ¿Cómo podemos revertir esto?
En mi opinión, con ellos.
Nuestra responsabilidad.
Con ellos.
Con ellos
Con ellos,
y también con el ambiente.
claro.
No solo empresas. Pero no solo, ellos son muy importantes, ellos son lo más importante. Su conocimiento y su personalidad. Pero también la empresa tiene que cambiar, tiene que ayudarnos. De algún modo.
Claro, claro. Pero la empresa somos nosotros.
La dirección, la empresa.
So probably this will be a trend, a roadmap, as I said in the title. This will be a roadmap, and we will go in that direction slowly, step by step. But hopefully, when I was a student, we really studied a lot of engineering things, how the reactors could explode. When I was a student, reactors also exploded, could explode. We studied that, but we never stopped to talk about safety. And now we have courses specific on safety. So honestly, I believe that if we keep on talking, if we keep on discussing, if we keep having pressure, law, the pressure from law is also important because, like it or not, if we have to do it, if it's a legal obligation, we will be more careful, and all these things together will make the change, will help to change. And this younger generation, they will make it better. I believe in you. Yes, the younger generation is more educated in terms of they already have this kind of safety-minded, So the problem is that sometimes when they start a new job in a company, that safety-minded moment can be trapped, So you have to fight for it. It's a value, you have to fight for it. But if they go to a good company, then they will be able to do things better. So if you go to a not safety-minded company, And if they try to, to close you down in something more old times, so you'll fight and you'll find a way.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria, for coming. It's a pleasure having you here. Okay?
Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.